Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk, first talk of 2026. These talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m, both here in the building and live online. Hi, if you're watching us online. So whether you're in Bristol or you're far away, you can join in the conversation. My name is Martin O'Leary. I'm the head of studio here. I'm a white man in my 40s, long hair and a beard, wearing a kind of baggy off-white jumper today. Every Friday, we throw open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, offering you the chance to spend some time in our space and hot desk alongside our residents and staff from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So especially big welcome to anyone who's new to the studio. Anyone who's new to the studio, put your hand up? Okay, quite a lot. New year, new audience. Welcome. This bit is for you. What is the Pervasive Media Studio? We're a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. And we're a partnership between Watershed, UE Bristol and the University of Bristol, and we're funded by Arts Council England and by generous donations from members of the public like your good selves. We offer studio space including desks, meeting rooms, events and opportunities, all for free to our residents as part of a spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. And most of all, we're a place for people to take risks with embryonic ideas and to make some time for collaboration. So just a few notes before we begin. Please do feel free to move around. There's a kitchen back there. You can grab a cup of tea or coffee or a glass of water. If you need to take a break at any point, there is a quiet space just next to this space. So to my left, your right, just around the corner there, there's a little room. It's got some sofas and beanbags, reasonably well soundproofed. We are not expecting a fire drill today. If you hear a fire alarm, it's probably real. It's probably downstairs' pizza oven. But we will have to evacuate. The fire exits are at the other end of the studio. Again, my left, your right, on either end. But in any event, one of the studio team will direct you towards them should we need to use them. And then there are accessible toilets, including baby change, in the corridor over there, just next to the kitchen. There'll be a Q&A just at the end of this talk. Those of you who are watching online, please pop your questions into the YouTube chat. Lautim is here. He will be your voice in the room today. If you're in the building, please raise your hand and we'll send around a microphone so that the folks at home can hear what you're saying. You can get news on all of our future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, at Pervasive Media Studio at mastodon.social on Mastodon, at pmstudiouk.bsky.social on Blue Sky, or at Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. I did say to myself that I was going to stop saying that we're not on X anymore, but we really aren't on X anymore. Neither should any of you be. All right, that's enough of that. Our speaker for today is Gabrielle Shiner-Hill. Gabby is a textile expert, academic and consultant, and as part of the My World programme, she's worked on 2 fellowships with the Fashion Museum in Bath, exploring how 3D scanning is transforming the preservation and presentation of archive collections. Today, she'll share the challenges and opportunities of digitising fashion and how those digital assets can create new ways for audiences to engage with fashion while supporting the museum's vision for its 2030 reopening. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Gabby.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today in person and online. And it's nice to see some friendly faces who I know, who I've been working with, and also who've collaborated on this work as well. So first off, yes, my name is Gabrielle Shiner-Hill. I'm a digital fellow at Ravensbourne University and a My World fellow from 2024 to 2025. So I was awarded 2 fellowships with the Fashion Museum Bath, and they were titled Dress of the Year, Ownership, Identity and Fashion in Digital Worlds. So a little bit of context about myself. My background is all fashion and textiles with sort of a sprinkling of technology. So I am a trained weaver, that's what I studied for my degree, and I worked in the fashion industry for the last 20 years. I also spent 4 years in America working for a software company, a textile design software company, so training companies how to use the computer for simulating, very early days because it was in the early 2000s. And I've also worked in academia since 2016, teaching sustainability and sourcing. And in 2021, I co-founded a digital materials business specifically for the fashion industry to support brands when they were moving into digital product creation. And we were using very specific softwares called Clothes 3D and Browseware, and we were delivering digital versions of physical materials into those softwares. So that is a little bit about me and what the fellowships were called, but you also need to know a little bit about the museum. So this is only for in the room, but can you tell me how many people know of the Fashion Museum Bath? We are in the area roughly, so quite a lot of people here do know. This is great. Maybe do you know the history of the museum and how many objects it has? I'm going to give a little bit of a background around that. So the museum was actually set up by Doris Langley Moore in 1963. So she was a collector, a writer, and a dress historian. And actually it was started by donating her own fashion collection, and it was originally called the Museum of Costume. And it does have 100,000 pieces currently stored in Warminster at Dent's Glove Factory. And those pieces are fashion outfits, accessories, vintage mannequins, jewellery, design books, sketches, yarn cards, magazines. They even have a collection of beauty spots. So the time span of the collection is from the time of Shakespeare to the present day. And it does cover about 500 years of human history, tastes and fashion. A really important point to note about the museum is that it is run by Bath and North East Somerset Council, which means it's publicly owned and council run. And the museum is undergoing a transformation, and it will reopen its doors in the old post office in Bath in 2030. That is 4 years from where we are now. So the fellowships, which came about in 2024, were proposed at a very critical time when the museum had actually shut its doors to the public and was beginning to work on how they could engage the collection and bring it out of the storage facility in some way. So the questions that were asked was, how can 3D scanning transform the preservation and presentation of archive collections? And how can digitisation help unlock the collection for new audiences? So we focus particularly on the Dress of the Year collection, which is actually the longest running collecting series within any museum globally. It's a designated collection. It's considered a designated outstanding collection. It's got 96 outfits and over 516 individual objects. So the museum has 100,000 objects, but for this project, we were looking specifically at Dress of the Year. If anyone wants to come in and sit down, please do, by the way, it's absolutely fine, yeah. So the Dress of the Year collection is considered like a who's who of the greatest name in fashion history. So it has Mary Quant, Ozzie Clark, Lagerfeld, Versace, Kenzo, Tom Ford, Galliano McQueen, Westwood, Gareth Pugh, Giorgio Armani. And it's, the selectors have included some of the leading lights in fashion over the decades, from senior fashion editors to influencers to groundbreaking stylists. So how did we choose which elements of the collection we were going to digitise? Part of my fellowship was to choose one piece from this collection, but that obviously wasn't going to work. So we ended up choosing 3 pieces in the initial fellowship. We chose the 1972 Biba, which is the first piece of children's wear in the collection. And actually that piece is considered sort of like what started mass consumer children's wear for us, really. We also chose the 2000 Versace dress, which J.Lo wore to the Grammys. And then we also chose the 1999 Alexander McQueen dress, which is famous for appearing in his sort of seminal show where Shalom Harlow was sprayed by the car robots. And actually, we don't have the dress that was sprayed. The Met has that in New York, but we have this from that show. So I'm not from a museum background. That is not my area. It's fashion, it's textiles. I'm used to being able to handle the textiles and fashion that I would be looking at and digitising. I'm used to being able to seeing them move, I'm seeing them drape, and seeing them worn. None of which can actually be done with the collection right now. They're either in boxes or static on mannequins. The only time you can see these pieces move is when they're really lifted out of a box, and maybe we can ask for them to be sort of gently swayed, if possible. So it is quite a difficult task to understand how we can begin to digitise them and also add an element of like life and movement to them, because fashion is obviously designed to be worn and designed to move. So we can't just go in and start handling them. They have to be mounted by the museum. If you're from that area, you will know that mounting is a skill in its entire self. So there was already that as a challenge to think about. We can't take the pieces from the storage facility either. I can't bring them to Bristol and say, well, actually, should we scan them here? They really all have to be kept in situ as well. The museum does loan out pieces, but this part of my fellowship was not moving these collections around. Actually, they did tell me a story that they loaned a piece to that was so expensive out in Japan that someone had to like fly with it and sit beside it on the plane. So, you know, I was not moving these pieces. So I began to ask, why are we making these digital versions of these outfits, and how are they going to be accessed? So before I even started thinking about what technology we might use, what kind of output we wanted, I had to ask myself some kind of quite key questions and ask the museum some key questions, and the council and the university I was working with. So I did ask the museum, like, what does digitisation mean to you? Now, they haven't catalogued the entire collection digitally. So first of all, it could just mean a photograph of every single piece, which is a huge undertaking. If you put that online, that would be considered a digital output. But we were thinking about how can we turn these models? How can we make them interactable? Why do we need to create digital twins of these fashion pieces? What is the point? How will it improve access? I was trying to make sure that we weren't just sort of scanning pieces for scanning's sake, and actually making usable assets that would add value to people viewing them essentially online. How can we show and share these digitized fashion pieces? Actually one of the biggest challenges, because you might have scanned a piece, but essentially, how do you get it online? Are you allowed to legally show it online? I just had a brief conversation with someone about IP in the audience before we started. Many, many challenges around that. And I can't say I can answer all those questions in this talk. And what challenges are we facing now? And really the biggest challenge that we had with the museum is a really dedicated, very small team, technically interested, but not technically skilled in this area. And their biggest fear was going down a road of digitisation that would become obsolete within 5 years. So basically scanning something, then the technology become obsolete, and they open the museum and they've done a load of work and it doesn't really serve them and serve their audience. So these were lots of questions we had to keep on asking before we even started. So then we jumped in and started scanning, because I thought, well, why don't we just do a lot of different options and try them out and test them out? Which is what we did. So I'm going to run through about 5 different ways that we scanned these pieces and what that actually means. So working on the McQueen dress, we scanned with camera and Martin Parsons. We scanned with these Art-Tech scanners. You can see it's like I'm holding what looks a bit like an iron, so it fires light at the dress. And what you get is a sort of a solid 3D model. Solid being, it's not moving, it's not simulated, but it is a digital replica. It's not completely exact, but it's capturing how that garment looks at that moment in time. Every thread that's hanging down, all the ways it has been mounted, it is capturing it very, very faithfully to how it has been mounted on that day. And this 3D object that you can see here, this can be brought into different pieces of software, but generally as a static object. This was created in Maya, the software, but the biggest problem we sort of had with this is it takes about, well, half an hour to scan, which is not a really long period of time, but a lot of processing and a lot of post-processing. And also those scanners are about $20,000. So I'd borrowed them and we're thinking, well, is this realistic, really moving forward for the museum? So that was the first scanning technique we had to go at. The second technique I was really interested in working on was actually creating obviously a piece that could move, and creating the garment from scratch again digitally. So making the pattern digitally, and you can see there in the second image, that's using a piece of software called Clo3D. We actually made the pattern by hand on the computer and reconstructed the dress. And actually here, this image on the furthest right-hand side, you can see the lace is draping. That is a digital render of that lace. The lace never sat like that. So we got quite a good representation. We scanned the textiles separately and we compiled it all together. But it was quite challenging because you can see underneath the dress, you've got this netting and tulle, and then you've got this sub-layer of the brown cotton, and then you've got the French lace on top. So it is quite challenging to sort of build that up within Clo3D. But this was really interesting because if we can download the pattern and give that to fashion students, that was really interesting to us. My fellowship was housed under Bar Spa. What if we, for example, could make approximate patterns of some of the pieces? We can't say this is Alexander McQueen's pattern, but approximate patterns of the pieces, and then share those with the fashion students. The fashion students can then use those patterns to build on, to make variations and iterations from pieces they can see in the collection. We can provide them with the digital materials. They can make garments with McQueen's materials, but totally new ideas. So suddenly you can work quite closely with the collection without having to physically handle the collection, which is what a lot of the challenges are when working with a museum. So this took, for example, who worked on this? So we had a clothes specialist who broke down the pattern. I did the textile digitisation. Actually, the clothes specialist then rendered this, and then we took it out into another piece of software later to make it animate. So there was about 3 of us working on this, which is quite a lot of people for one dress. And it took maybe to do the pattern takes a couple of hours, and then to digitize it another hour. You're talking sort of like 6, 7, maybe 8 hours per piece, which quickly adds up if you're trying to do hundreds of garments. So we were thinking, is this, again, another way we can digitize the collection? The next thing we did is we had, I was really interested in trying something a bit low tech and low fidelity, which was using a software called Polycam, which you might be familiar with. You can download it for free, and you can use it on iPads or Android or iPhones. And what you can get is you can scan the dress in about 5 minutes and create augmented reality versions of that piece. So this was done in 2024. Polycam's got significantly better just since then, and we've been using it for some testing recently, and we can get some really high fidelity outputs. And this was just to show, what if it's just me? What if it's just the documentation manager from the museum and they just have an iPhone and Wi-Fi connection? What could they scan with that? So it was really trying to look at these sort of like high-tech, expensive ways of scanning, and also more low-tech, more easily priced ways of scanning. Don't want to say cheap. So what we discovered when we were scanning is that we got this real extended narrative around the piece. So the Alexander McQueen piece had been in the box since it had been on display for the Dress of the Year in 1999. And we were interested to see where had that dress been before it came to the museum. We wanted to understand where the lace came from, where the leather came from, about the model that wore the garment. And so we found some footage of the dress on the catwalk. This is the only footage of it moving. And we discovered that the way the dress was mounted was actually quite different from how it went down the catwalk. And you can see here this green overlay. Martin overlaid the shape of our dress against screen grabs of how the dress looked like on the catwalk. And we realized, actually, we hadn't done a very good job. We were not faithful to what it looked like on the catwalk. We were faithful to how it had been mounted in the museum, but not how it looked like in the catwalk. And actually, I was chatting to one of the people at the museum, and she was saying she hadn't seen that footage of it on the catwalk either. That's not an official Alexander McQueen video. That's someone who's put that up, who has that footage, but she'd not seen it moving. I also contacted the model that wore the dress on the catwalk, called Audrey, a French model, still modelling actually, and she said it was very, very challenging to wear the piece because there is this leather neck piece which constricted her movement, as you can see really clearly. I then found someone from the atelier, and they were explaining to me that the leather is Italian and they used like a saddle making technique to build up the shoulder pads. So suddenly, from what was essentially a fellowship designed to look at digitisation, we suddenly got this huge amount of information around just one of the pieces that we were scanning. We also found out there was a really specific applique lace technique used on the bottom, which we also hadn't created properly in Clo. So we basically found out we'd done a terrible job. But we made it better, don't worry. But I guess this is the whole point of a fellowship, and the whole point of doing this research is to find out what we really should be looking at and how closely we should be looking. So yes, I am a textiles specialist. I'm not a lace specialist. I'm definitely not an applique lace specialist. I'm wovens for sure. So my textile shortcomings are being shown to me pretty clearly here as well. But it made for a much more interesting piece of research. So what we did is we asked someone to try and animate the garment for us. And what you see in this video here is we looked at the undergarments, and there's 30 meters, it's crazy, of tulle used to make just the undergarments that constructed that piece. And they were starched very, very heavily. And that starch had degraded over time, which is why our dress, when we mounted it, did not look the same as the one on the catwalk. But this was only found out because we met someone who worked in the atelier who had actually worked on some of the pieces. And so we asked Laura Fish, who helped us break down all of these patterns and bring them together in an animation, just to really sort of show us, you know, you don't really understand that so much work goes into this piece by just looking at it on that mannequin. And that was a really interesting outcome of this particular McQueen piece. So that's the McQueen piece, and I've got a couple of other ways that we also wanted to interact with the different pieces. So I was quite keen on creating a filter of one of the garments as well. And like full disclosure, I chose the Bieber one because it was the easiest one, especially because it has that repeating dot pattern, which wasn't going to cause us too many troubles. So we basically made the garment in Clo 3D again. We moved it into Lens Studio, which is the software for creating a Snapchat filter, and made it into, this is our testing of the filter, and made it into a filter just to see if we could have this filter shown in a public setting, what kind of feedback would we get? Now, this is not an exact representation of this Bieber dress. This is an approximation, and this is a playful take on it for sure. So we had lots of people playing and twirling. And what we did with the filter, which is a little bit uncommon, is we tried to add a little bit of swish and sway, which you don't often get in fabrics on filters. They're quite static, or they might move. You might have something like on your face or around your head and it will move, but it's not swishing and swaying. So people were having quite a lot of fun having a go at playing with this filter. And I have done some other filter work with my work with the V&A as well. And generally what you get is a high and quick level of engagement and a lot of movement and a lot of play. The question could be, are you learning about the piece? Perhaps not, but are you engaging with the piece? 100% you are. So the kind of feedback we got was historic garments would be interesting. I would like it if people wanted loads of them. They wanted like really like a lot of them. I was like, I've only got one, sorry. But I was like, we can make more. It's amazing, I've never tried a dress like this. I can imagine people doing this in a museum all day long. Maybe not all day long, but you could imagine a little bit of a playful element. I also wanted to, I didn't do any other AR filter dresses because I think from this one we got a sense of what it could be. But I was really interested in working with the general public and students to get them scanning. So we ran a day during Bath Sustainable Fashion Week, working with Bath College, where we invited 20 students to come and scan a replica dress. So this is a replica 18th century dress. I'm just going to flick through. So the dress on the right-hand side is the physical dress, and the dress on the left-hand side is the augmented reality one. If you look closely, you can sort of see that the floor doesn't match up. But essentially, what we allowed the students to do was they could scan the dress and then they could, in Polycam again, and then they could take it away and work on it later. So we wanted to understand, is this useful if you were going back to your sketchbook, for example, you've left the museum or you haven't visited the museum at all, but you've scanned something off of the website and you can see the dress in front of you. Is this helpful to you? And the age range of the students was 18 to 24, just to kind of give you a bit of a guide there. I was asking if did they think this technology would help you engage and understand? And the students at the time were saying yes, because it allows you to have a closer look at details that you might otherwise not notice, freedom to zoom, you can see the back of the garment, which you can't see in display cases. So this is the kind of positive feedback we were getting. But again, it was trying to dig in to see if it would actually help you in an education setting, which maybe we didn't answer in this piece particularly. So then, the second part of the fellowship, that was all in the first 10 months, which is, it was 2 days a week, 2.5 days a week for 10 months, working quite intensively with the museum and working on access to the pieces as well. And then in the second part of the fellowship, a new piece of technology was available to us from a company called Nefeli Technologies, and it was actually scanning. You can see this camera stack on the middle, and the garment there has been put on a turntable, and we can turn it for 90 seconds and scan it there. And we're visualizing actually this piece with something called 3D Gaussian splats. If you're from the technical side, you might know, there's a few people who do know. But essentially what this means, this is a 3D object that you can move, you can turn, and what you can see, and what's really interesting, I might actually just go back a little bit on that one. Maybe if I can find my mouse, but my mouse might have disappeared. Oh, there it is. what you can see, if I go back a little bit, is when I turn the dress, can you see that the lighting is reflecting in the sequins? So with standard photogrammetry, which is what we were doing with some of the other pieces, we wouldn't have got that outcome. So this was really interesting to us. This is a way of us, when pieces are mounted, they can kind of run through this system if we think this is a good way of digitising. And this gave us quite a lot of hope because of the amount of time it took as well. 90 seconds on a podium, maybe 30 to 45 minutes to an hour post-processing. A lot quicker than a lot of the other techniques we'd been doing. Let me just move my mouse back here. And this is the kind of setup you have. So it's not hugely invasive. It doesn't take up a huge amount of space. You kind of have a diffused lighting source, a camera stack, and the system and a server. So again, it's sort of portable and small, and it can be set up in different museum settings as well. And it's not invasive to the garment, which was really important. So this was working with Nephili technologies, which allowed us really to start to see, is this something we could implement in the museum long term? So the museum has also received funding for something called Explore the Collection. And Explore the Collection is some sort of seed funding for them to build an online catalogue, for want of a better word. So you'll be able to visit the collection digitally before the museum opens, and then also once it opens as well in 2030. So these pieces have been put up as part of the Explore the Collection. You don't have to look at, the idea is just to show you that we've done some different pieces here. But currently, they're in a file format that doesn't work brilliantly for viewing online at home. So we've kind of hit a bit of a wall in the sense that right now, you can look at videos of them turning, but you can't interact with them yourself. Hopefully in the next sort of 6 to 9 months, we'll get to a point where we will be able to interact with them. But right now we've got these video formats. And then the Explore the Collection prototype from the museum is going live in February of this year, specifically focusing on the Dress of the Year collection. So it's been a really interesting sort of set of challenges to work, for sure. And we've also been doing a huge amount of public consultation. So the museum's spoken to around 4,000 people in the Bath area. I've been at a few of those days. I've maybe met a couple of hundred, not 4,000 people. But we've been getting feedback and getting a lot of feedback on what these digital assets mean for if you can't visit the museum, or if you can visit the museum, do you want to interact digitally in any way, shape or form? So people were really interested in seeing the patterns. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. Of course you'd want to see the pattern, but they were really interested in seeing the pattern and really interested in downloading the pattern as well. So that is an area we are going to explore for sure. They were very interested in the level of detail you can get on these 3D assets. So you can zoom in further than you can with a photograph, and you can move and you can turn the garment completely 360. Someone was saying, yes, this is great, but I want to be able to touch and smell the clothes. I totally understand that. Wanting to feel the textiles, having a textile background, I completely understand that. The main piece of feedback that we got that was very positive is that you can see the back of the pieces. This is very interesting. And then finally, we've been asked can we use the digital collection to tell the hidden stories of the collection? So there are many areas of the Fashion Museum Bath's collection which don't have narratives publicly shown at the moment. So we're hoping we will be able to explore those in a much wider format by using these digital collections. So why should we digitise fashion? Because we could also ask the question, for a council-run museum, should they be spending time and money digitising if that's not what the general public are looking for? But actually, we've been told that some people are actually looking for that digitisation. We would like to see the patterns. We need some digitisation for preservation and conservation. So there is a Margot Fonteyn dress that was worn by Margot Fonteyn that has ostrich feathers. Every time it's taken out of the box, it loses another feather. If we could digitise that dress with the Nephili technologies, because with feathers, you can capture that really clearly with the technology we're using, that would be really, really helpful, obviously. What about accessibility and engagement? What if you can't visit the museum? We know it's closed for 4 years, but once it opens, what if it's just not a right setting for you? What if you are not based in this country and you want to see the collection? And what if this museum setting is just not right? How can we support research? So how can we allow these pieces to be seen for some wider research, and then you could go in and actually see the piece physically as well? Can we use these digital pieces for knowledge sharing and diverse narratives? And that's what we're looking at within 2026 with a grant we've received. And then material simulation. What if we could give out a set of Vivienne Westwood fabrics to the students of Ravensbourne University to work with, created in collaboration with Vivienne Westwood, obviously, but that would be really amazing to work within that digital space. And then finally, the commercial and licensing potential. IP is the biggest unanswered question within this space, but there is a question around commercialising these pieces and licensing them within this space, within a costume space, within a film space. It can make the museum in the best possible way very uncomfortable to think about these things, but also we do need to be revenue generating as well. So there is an element around working within that space as well. And finally, the fellowships, the 2 fellowships that I've undertaken, I have not done this just by myself. I love technology and I like to use it as much as I can, but I am not skilled in all these different areas. It's been a huge collaboration project with lots of different people working within this space, which I'm very grateful for. So a lot of the people I've worked with are listed here. And being under Ravensbourne University has been obviously extremely helpful, and being part of Watershed and Pervasive Media Studio and a My World Fellow has allowed me access to many different creative technologists and people who've worked specifically on this fellowship. The future is that we are writing the digitisation of the collection into the next 4-year strategy of the museum, and I hope to be part of that. I am part of that currently, and we will be also releasing the Explore the Collection prototype in February and continuing our digitisation work throughout 2026 and onwards until the opening in 2030. So that is the end of my talk. I'm going to offer it out to questions.
Thank you very much, Gabby. Does anyone have a question? Sorry, would you mind using the microphone?
Are you sharing these ideas with other museums that have got costume?
Yes.
There's one in Manchester which I used a lot when I worked in the theatre in the Royal, I've forgotten the name of it anyway, the Corn Exchange.
Yeah.
One of the things was to go behind the scenes and see the patterns.
Yeah.
And close gazing at textures and things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, all of this work is essentially done in collaboration, and we're working, we're having lots of conversations with lots of different museums. So Fashion Museum Bath is very open to having those conversations. Ourselves, as developing this, are also open to having conversations. So we are working particularly with the Museum Bath at the moment, but there are lots of sort of like little projects happening all over the UK, like Fashion and Textile Museum in London, for example. We've had conversations with them. They've just had the CosProps exhibition running through. So it's all open access, and the information is all being shared, and we are trying to have those conversations, around how we can digitise and work with different collections.
You could then make collections for a special exhibition, couldn't you?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, the dream, I think, also would be is when an exhibition happens, either before the pieces go in or as they come out, we can scan, or someone can scan those pieces, because when the mounting is so expensive, right? And it really does take the time. So if that is mounted and done, then we can scan, but deconstructing them digitally, not physically, to make the pattern, we need to sit with garment technologists, pattern specialists to do that. And that has to be done on certain pieces. It can't be done on everything. But I think that's almost some of the most valuable work that could be done, the patterns. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay,
Hi, that was really fascinating. Thank you. I was wondering, there's some quite new technologies in here, like spatting's not been around for very long. I was wondering how you, either personally or as part of this process, as part of the bigger team, sort of stayed abreast of what was available and made sure that, you were able to take advantage of this, whereas you might have missed it. And life had been harder.
There could be something right now that we have no idea what's going on. Well, basically, lots of conversations, going to lots and lots of different talks and events. Actually, Martin met Nefeli at an event. Martin's here. So he met Nefeli at an event. And really, it was talking to people saying, well, what about this? What about that? Have you tried this? Because it's not... the technology for scanning is not 100% my area. My area is to go, oh, I don't like, that doesn't look right. You know, it's not good enough for what we need within the fashion and textile space. So it really is about, combing the internet, having lots of conversations, chatting, and also part of the fellowship connected me to lots of different businesses in the region. So Nefeli is based in Bristol, in BDFI, which is really good. And lots of the other people I've worked with are completely regionally based. So that really helps, sort of having that network. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I found lots of stuff on LinkedIn as well, which is always interesting, whether you can bear to do that.
Hi, thank you so much for the talk, by the way. I was just wondering, when you've worked with all these amazing new processes, have you been able to apply any of the skills that you've learnt to the non-fabric related parts of the collection and like all of the other Baines? I'm guessing you're working with other Baines collection pieces as well.
So actually I'm not, to be fair. And so the scanning of spaces is happening already within those areas. So for example, scanning of Bath, all the Roman baths, all those kind of ideas. So I haven't personally done that, but actually if you go onto a provider like Sketchfab, for example, you can just see like essentially lots of like solid objects being scanned by people continually, right? And then uploaded or created. So me personally, no, I've specifically focused on textiles and fashion, but it is, yeah, I mean, Polycam, for example, you can go and have a look at their feed and it is just, you know, solid piece after solid piece coming through.
Do you think that will fit into the wider sort of like digital archive? Are you hoping that it will slot in nicely somewhere?
Sorry, do I
sort
hope?
of like if you're looking at going onto the Baines Museum's websites, is it going to slot nicely into the collection?
Yeah, well, that is the plan, right?
Yeah.
That is part of their Explore the Collection plan, 100%. Yeah. Yes, it will be part of, it'll be housed, well, essentially actually it will be housed somewhere else, but you'll be able to see it on the website right then and there. You're not going somewhere else to kind of visit it. It will link you to a viewer. But also, there's other things that are really interesting about some of the scanning work, which is also like who's scanning and how can we help people scan? Can we bring people in to help us scan? Which is a piece of work we're doing in February of this year with 10 young people, 18, 16 and 18, to help us scan parts of the collection. So again, it's like how can we, so not gatekeep this, but try and open it up in some way as well. So yeah.
Great, thanks.
No worries.
There's one over here. Yeah.
It seems.
Sorry. For people at home.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Okay, so I didn't realise that. I just had an idea popped in my head. Was that I am very dull, but watched something World Photography 2026 on BBC iPlayer, and they did something where they needed to count some kind of animal, buffalo or something, and they harnessed all the science departments to photograph from satellites, little digital, and they put it all together and then honed in on it. Sounds to me like this kind of thing, because you were just talking about going to particular places and getting them to join in, but it was all scientific based from, I mean, I don't know how the digital, they would have to go and visit museums, wouldn't they?
I mean, that's, the scanning in that sense, I guess, isn't I can't really speak to that scanning idea, but essentially citizen scanning in the sense of people are going around with their phones and LiDAR scanning parts of Bristol, Bath, London, all of that. So you could, in theory, bring all of that together to create the piece that you are looking for. But it reminds me of like the zebra count in the Serengeti, that as well. I should watch that. It sounds like a similar thing.
It's very, very similar.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I wanted to sort of understand is how realistic, because there's a lot of research and data being collected, but how realistic, because you were talking about, as soon as the fashion, the item comes out, maybe we could scan it then. But there's such secrecy around a show that how realistic is that? At what stage would, I guess that's all part of the formation, and this will...
You're completely right. It's not necessarily, again, one for every designer in any way, shape or form, and people are having, so the Metropolitan Museum did do, scanned 100 fashion outfits for their Sleeping Beauties exhibition, but honestly, to try and find those or to see those, it is like, they are locked down, right? So, and whereas this is a very different project because it is completely due to be, and also to be released as well. But then again, if you have a digital object that you've created and you're releasing it, then is there a level of reverse engineering that people can do around that? I'm not saying I know the answer to that, but it does ask create lots of questions.
Great photo.
Yeah.
Look forward to it.
Yeah.
We got one online.
Hey, thanks. This question says, what is the cost of the Nephili system? I imagine it's not that affordable for individuals.
Yeah, so I mean, commercially, they're not selling it commercially at the moment. So we've been using it. I mean, the around cost, I couldn't actually necessarily quote that, but it's not as much as an Artec scanner, I can tell you that much, which is 20,000. So yeah, it's not commercially available as of yet, but they are going to be making it commercially. Yeah, but they can go in contact.
There's another question that asks, are there any further developments in scanning technology that you're looking for, or do the current app/hardware systems meet your needs well enough?
No, we always want more, for sure. But we want movement, basically, is what we want. So essentially, better simulation. Digitising the textiles is not the problem, really. It's getting them to move on the garment, which is where we're always really interested to find out more. Better quality, better fidelity, better optimization. Can it actually work directly at home on your computer or on your phone? That's what we really want, because really, if people are looking for things online, they're generally doing it through their phone. So it needs to be usable in that sense. So yeah, always want more.
Any other questions from the audience? If not, I had one.
Oh, yeah.
So in sort of digitizing archaeology, there's like a really clear distinction between digitizing the object as it is now and a reconstruction of how it originally was.
Yeah.
And here it feels like there's a very blurry line.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, do you have a sense of which of those things are you aiming to do, and how do you think about that distinction?
Yeah, and if I'm completely honest, when I went into this fellowship, because I'm not from an archiving background, I've been working with the documentation managers and the curator, that wasn't really on my radar in that sense. There are two schools of thought. There are create the digital version of the piece as captured in time, June 2024, this is the McQueen garment. The question is, I think, for the outcomes that the museum is looking for, is that what they want? It's actually not just for preservation. They want interaction. They want unlocking of collection, which might mean that you're making approximations and recreations if you want to be able to interact and work with these pieces. So when we know the real outcomes of where the museum might want to be with this, I think we'll probably end up looking at, recreations, not exact replicas. Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience?
Well, thank you very much, everyone.
Well, say
Really
thank you again to
enjoyed
Gabby.
it. Yeah, thank you. It's end Feb. End Feb.
Okay, great.
The team might be upset with me if I say beginning. I think it's end Feb.
All right, before you all go, if you want to stick around in Hot Desk today or find out more about what we do, then please come find one of the studio team. We'll be happy to help. Studio team, give us a wave. Here we are. If you're watching online, drop us a line on studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions. If you like what you've seen here today and you want to help us keep bringing you great talks like this one, please do visit watershed.co.uk/donate. Watershed is a charity, and we really do rely on the generosity of our supporters to continue our work. Thank you all for being here today, and we'll see you all again next time.
Bye.